Welcome back to every naval battle in history. In 190 BCE, the Seleucid Empire, a Greek successor state to Alexander's empire based largely on the old Persian Empire, fought two major battles at sea against the Romans and their Greek allies. The first of these was fought at the mouth of the Eurymedon River in modern-day Turkey in 190 BCE. And despite being formally part of the roman-seleucid war, I'm including it in the Punic Wars for reasons that I think will become clear as I tell this story. So the Second Punic War finished in 202 BCE with the Roman victory over Hannibal at the Battle of Zama, and the subsequent peace treaty of 201 BCE. Under the treaty, Carthage lost its territories outside of Africa, was forbidden to keep war elephants, and was limited to a fleet of 10 warships. They also had to pay 10,000 talents of silver. A Roman talent is around 33 kilograms. In today's money, it's around $4 billion, so chump change to modern nation states, but a big deal back then. Now, here's where things get interesting. With the war over Hannibal, yes, the Hannibal, ran for and was elected Carthage's suffete, or chief magistrate. This certainly runs against the narrative of vengeful Romans hounding the genius who had dared to humiliate them, as he held the role for around 5 years, which is a fair time for any ruler. Trying to figure out how to pay the Roman reparations, Hannibal set about an audit of Carthage's finances, which found out two very interesting things. One, the revenues of Carthage were sufficient to pay the Romans without needing to raise taxes. And two, the ruling class of oligarchs known as the 104 were engaged in corruption and embezzlement, which was crippling the city's finances. He then set about trying to reform the 104, which almost certainly had something to do with the way Hannibal was run out of town on a rail in 195 BCE. Now, the traditional history is that the Romans became suspicious of Carthage's renewed prosperity and believed that Hannibal had been in touch with Antiochus III of the Seleucid Empire. How did the Romans come to harbour these suspicions? It certainly sounds like the sort of thing that an angry cabal of corrupt businessmen could organise. Hannibal did a runner and found his way to Tyre in modern-day Lebanon, which, it's important to remember, had been the mother city of Carthage. From there he travelled to Ephesus and the court of Antiochus III, also called the Great, a ruler who had conquered an enormous swathe of the earth before tangling with the Romans. There's a story that Antiochus paraded his huge army for Hannibal's benefit and asked him if it would be enough for the Romans. Hannibal is said to have wryly replied, "I think all this will be enough. Yes, quite enough for the Romans, even though they are most avaricious." The implication being that the Romans were going to eat the Seleucid army. While at Ephesus, Hannibal cooked up a plan to stage a coup in Carthage and bring that power against the Romans in support of the Seleucids. Nothing came of this plan, but you have to wonder if Hannibal's motivations were as much to get square with the Carthaginian elite as any desire to fight Romans again. In 190 BCE, Hannibal was tasked with building a fleet to support Antiochus in the Roman-Seleucid War. And finally, a Carthaginian applied his brain to the subject of how to defeat the Romans at sea. Hannibal had two advantages here. One, he knew the Romans liked to turn sea battles into land battles. And two, he was uniquely good at beating Romans in land battles. So, using his friends in his mother country of Tyre, he built a fleet of exceptionally large ships to be dominant in boarding actions. In August 190 BCE, his new fleet came across the Rhodian fleet, anchored in the mouth of our old friend the Eurymedon River. Check out episode 10 if you haven't already. Things were looking good for Hannibal. He'd built his fleet specifically to counter Roman strengths, and he'd caught the enemy on the beach. But it turned out he had two very big problems. The first is that he wasn't primarily fighting Romans here. It was their allies from the island of Rhodes, the masters of the eastern Mediterranean in this period. They had smaller, faster ships built to win with their rams rather than boarding. The second problem was that the Rhodian fleet is a battle-hardened monster crewed by experienced mariners at this time. And while Hannibal is undoubtedly a genius, this was his first battle at sea, and his crews were not experienced. The battle started well for Hannibal, having caught the enemy fleet at anchor. He also outnumbered them, 47 ships to 38, and his ships were bigger. But the Rhodians got stuck right in. They rearranged their forces adroitly on the fly, and on the landward wing pulled off the old Greek diekplus manoeuvre. This is where they sailed between Hannibal's ships and then executed a sharp turn with their rams into the hindquarters of their opponents. It's a much spoken of tactic, but was only recorded as being successful on 3 occasions, of which this battle is one. This was too much for the Seleucids, and the landward wing ran away. Hannibal decided preserving his fleet was the best course of action, and also withdrew. Hannibal lost 1 ship captured and 20 damaged in exchange for 10 damaged Rhodian ships. We'll discuss the Battle of Myonessus next week, but by the end of this war Hannibal was forced to flee the much diminished Seleucid sphere and seek refuge in Bithynia on the southern coast of the Black Sea. There are stories that he used pots of snakes as a missile weapon in a sea battle against Pergamon, but details of that battle are hard to find. In any event, the second battle of the Eurymedon, a Punic fleet, albeit out of Tyre and not Carthage, commanded by Hannibal, and that's why I'm slating this one in the Punic Wars. Strap in folks, we've got lots more to cover as we take on every naval battle in history. Smash those like and subscribe buttons, ring that bell, you don't want to get left behind.